to Representative Saaberie from Pakistan about the election of the new prime minister, battling to get hold of that person right now. So we'll see what happens later on. But I can tell you now, we'll later on talk about the Soweto Mosque, the Dlamini Mosque, as part of that history that we're doing about the history of the most historical mosques in South Africa. So don't miss that one. Also, how to kick your nicotine habit during the fasting period. And then Ashraf Garda will talk about being fired up, and I'm looking forward to as well. We're going to talk about the cemeteries at the Avalon Cemetery between Eldorado Park and Lenasia in just a moment, because we just want to get the backstory about who runs it and the maintenance thereof. But this program brought to you by Africa Muslims Agency. Imagine a world where every family has food for suhoor and iftar in Ramadan. Call the AMA on 010-0722-262. Now, I tell you what, my interest, I'm quite fascinated by what I call a Twitter spat of sorts between two people that I know, Lyubov Abravitova, who's the ambassador to the Ukraine, Ukraine ambassador to South Africa, and Clayton Moniela, who's the spokesperson for international relations in South Africa, that's DIRCO. So the ambassador of Ukraine tweeted yesterday saying, since the beginning of the Russian invasion, I did not have any requested meeting with the South African government officials. 45 days, and then she's got 3 exclamation marks saying, my people are under brutal attack of Russians now. So that's what she said. Clayton Moniela responding, he's from DIRCO, saying, Ambassador, you know this is wrong and undiplomatic. You met DIRCO diplomats on the 3rd of March. Number 1. Number 2, the head of Europe branch several times. And number 3, the president's international relations advisor. And number 4, you also DM Alvin Burtis, right? We've made a long request for the president to speak to your president. You're not responding. That's quite interesting. And then the ambassador replying once again with a picture with Zain Dango, who's now the Director General at DIRCO, said had an important meeting with the DG, Director General of DIRCO, Mr. Zain Dango, agreed to support and continue our dialogue. I wonder what you make of all of that. She can't talk today, but she promised to talk tomorrow. Maybe we will have that conversation with her to get her side of the story between her push for Ukraine, understandably, she's the ambassador, as well as that relationship with South Africa and international relations. Now, that's the one thing. I'm particularly interested in cemeteries by and large, because, we talk about flooding in KZN, and I do know that when it comes to flooding, even in Johannesburg, the areas that get flooded and waterlogged are also cemeteries. There's an impact on the graves as well. With both my parents buried at the Avalon Cemetery, between Eldorado Park and Lenasia. So I have a personal interest in that, but I'm sure you do too. In general, let's find out more about the administration, the maintenance of that particular cemetery with Aboobaker Sayed, who's the chairman of the Saaberie Chishty Society. Assalamu alaikum, Aboobaker. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. Thank you. So first things first. I mean, the Avalon Cemetery. Who administers that cemetery?
The Avalon Cemetery and many other cemeteries in Johannesburg is administered by the City of Johannesburg, and it falls under the department of the City Parks Department.
Okay, so that means, so when we say administer, that means what? They give us the space to have the graves. Do they dig up the plots as well? For each grave, is that their responsibility to ensure they marked accordingly? In the lines that graves normally are. Is that their problem?
So what it entails is obviously that the City Parks looks after the Kabristan. They maintain the Kabristan. So for all faiths, they would dig up the hole. It's a responsibility, obviously, of the undertakers to close up the hole, and they would sort of maintain the cemetery itself. That includes the security to the cemetery, the grass cutting around the cemetery, the water supply that comes through the cemetery, the electricity, etc. So all this is maintained by them. Only thing that we, as the Ummah faithful, is for the Qadr itself.
Okay, got that. So what then, I've been listening on other media about massive, vandalizing of their cemeteries, and I know many of them have granite stones, and it's not traditional in the Muslim community to have cemeteries adorned with granite, graves adorned with granite stone. But what's the general condition of the Avalon Cemetery?
To be honest, the Everton cemetery itself is not in a good state. And the reason being there's a lot of vandalism that takes place at the cemetery. So let's start off at the Qadrs itself. So initially people used to put up like a signage board, a perspex board with steel. And we should find that people or vagrants used to actually steal it and sell it. So that's when people opted now for a concrete type of a plaque that they put around like a headstone. So vandalism also, they stole all the taps around the area, they stole most of the water supply. Like during the COVID, as many would know, we converted the little area there into a wholesale facility. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that became and everything was done and they even ripped up the copper pipes in the wall, etc. So then, from our side, there's always been vandalism to the Jamaat Khana. There's been water there. They've been stealing the pumps, stealing the electricity, etc. So from our side, as Saaberie, that's where we employ the security guard to look after the Jamaat Khana and the wholesale facility that is there.
So okay, and would you say? I mean, look, vandalism and theft seem just to be a completely South African problem. So it's not just one cemetery. In fact, I hear it's across the board, across the country of different faiths, right? But did you say, if I heard you correctly, that the responsibility of providing security for the cemetery actually is City Parks and not Saaberie Chishty, for example, right?
No, clearly it is a deposit. They do provide a security, or they're supposed to provide 24-hour security in all the cemeteries. But unfortunately, we noticing with the security, the Sultana, etc., was being vandalized, and that's why we employ additional security to try and look after, try and maintain that little piece that we do have, where we can go in at least perform Janaza, Salah, etc. Because all the water has been stolen. When we say the water has been stolen at the cemetery, unfortunately, Avalon Cemetery does not have a water supply. There's an informal settlement close by, and the entire water was diverted towards the informal settlement. So, numerous occasions, council has got involved, different people, I mean, we wrote letters to different individuals, and they still can't get it right. So currently, if you go there, even in the Muslim section, non-Muslim section, the entire cemetery does not have any water supply.
Yeah, and what about and the state of our graves themselves? What is the state in general, and then what happens when you actually have massive rains like we have now?
So unfortunately, generally, when we do have massive rainfall like how we do have now, a lot of the cupboards will sort of sink in. And that's because obviously it's water, sand is going further down, etc. So I think it's also imperative for people to know that once you bury your loved ones, you should try and visit them as frequent as possible and try and also lift up the sin and maintain that cover itself. So that is the problem that we do foresee. And sometimes that's when we call upon volunteers from the community and we have these campaigns where we're looking after the cover, so trying to lift it up, etc. So as organizations, Saaberie Chishty, and there's various other organizations or other bodies in Malaysia and surrounding areas that would say, let's call it the maintenance of Amazon Cemetery, and they would sort of try and look after the covers itself.
And regarding, just to extend this conversation for a moment as we wrap up around the work of Saaberie Chishty around burials, what is it you do? How much support do you need from the public? Because it's an ongoing support that you provide regarding burial support, right?
Yeah, so with regard to burials, unfortunately, where we do need support is to pay for people that cannot afford it. So unfortunately, we still have people within our community that are destitute and their mayors are unpaid for. And that's where sort of we use the Lila funds to try and pay for them. It's the maintenance of our hearses, our fleet of hearses, etc. And we always rely on public support because the public support that enables us to do more for the community. And the burial organization is only one such a division within the society.
Okay, yeah. Give us a website perhaps or contact number that I can direct people to if they're interested to know more about the work of Saaberie Chishty, Aboobaker.
So they can go to our website www.saaberechishty.co.za. SAABERIECHISHTY.co.za.
Okay, simple as that. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for that. So there you are. Again, vandalism across the country, across the faiths, also a problem at the Avalon Cemetery between Lenasia and El Dorado Park. And yeah, City Park should provide security around the Gusel area or the Jamaat Khana. The Saaberie Chishty has done something, but they can't do it all. Again, lots of theft that takes place, and for people buying things or rather taking things from the graves, especially if those metal things can be melted down and then reselling. Goodness, for every stolen item, there's a buyer, isn't it? Sure. Let's talk about other issues with and hopefully get you fired up with Ashraf Garda right after this.